Well, welcome back to the pod.
We made it.
Here we are.
Week 4.
Week 4.
We had a little bit of a pause.
We did.
Lots has been going on.
It's been a busy season.
Yes, we had our winter camp, and we're in Lent.
Woo woo.
We had Ash Wednesday, which was
go.
cool.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So let's talk about some of those things. Let's talk about Lent for a second. We're in that season.
We are.
Our student ministry got to lead our Ash Wednesday service, which is always fun.
Always
time.
really cool.
And our church lets us do that. And what'd you give for Lent, Katie, this year?
So I felt like this year I had no ideas at the beginning of the year and was like, I feel like I've done everything. I don't know what to do. What am I needing from, like, what's something that's really, like, in my life as of now, really relevant. And so I kind of was wrestling with it, but I came up with, it's kind of unconventional, but in my brain it works, and I was like, that's all that matters. It's between me and Jesus anyways. So I give up unnecessary spending is what I called it. So, what that looks like for me is like, if I'm, like, I don't know, it's an afternoon that I'm like running errands or whatever it is, I'm like, Starbucks sounds really good right now, but I'm not like I'm not hungry, I don't need it or whatever it is. Maybe not buy that, or be like, I'm okay. Or like you're going to Target to pick up like necessities, things you need, whatever, you're running errands, but then you're like, oh, this so-and-so is really cute, or I really like this, I really want this, when they're not things that you need. Not spending on unnecessary spending is what I'm calling. So like, spending. Obviously I'm still getting essentials, I'm still like buying food when I have to, when I'm for a meal, but it's like less of the like treats and the extra stuff, because
it's like emotional spending.
When it's like, because it's like, I always call them, my mom, when I was younger, when it was like getting like a little coffee or a little like a new shirt or something that's like fun, we used to call them like little happies. Because the idea, I mean, that's what like material stuff does, right? It's like the little like happy moment that you have for the fleeting little happy moment. And obviously that's fun most of the time, but it was I feel like I do that a lot, where I'm like little things, and I'm like, oh, it's just a little happy here and there, and realizing that I don't need that because I've got Jesus. And so that was like something
that's good.
It's hard though. I have been, gonna be real honest, I've failed a couple times. I haven't failed. I'm still trying. I've just cheated a couple times on accident, and I've been upset with myself. But I was like, I don't know. So it's hard when you make your own rule like that, where you're like, does this count? Does this not? And then you're like, yeah. But you know what? We're still trying. It's only the beginning of March, so we've got time to keep going.
You do have plenty of time.
Yeah, I've only cheated like once or twice, so.
The
problem is my brain always goes like, I'm always like, well, because so Sunday you can like have as your, I don't like to call it a cheat day, because you're not cheating, you're celebrating that it's Sunday and you're celebrating that. So it's a celebration day where you get to do whatever you gave up or whatever. But I always find that like when Sunday comes around, it's not like it's not whatever I give up. It's like that's the day that I don't care to to give it up. It's always a different day where you're like, and so when the times that I cheat, I'm like, it'll be like my Sunday celebration, even though it's not Sunday. And then so I don't know. But we're just gonna keep trying.
It's wrestling with the immediate gratification.
Totally.
Because that's what that like the Sunday forces you. If you like the celebration day, if you do that right, then it's actually, you're not leaning into the emotionality of your choice. Yeah,
because like a couple hours later, I'm gonna be fine not getting whatever it is that I wanted in that moment, and I know that. But like at the time, it's like that feeling moment. But that's good, because the idea that like, everyone like in the idea with Lent of like whatever you're giving up, when you have the moment of like, oh, I want that, or I want this, like using that exact moment to be like, nope, I don't need it though, and Jesus, and like praying through that moment too, and letting that carry with you, because being like, like Jesus, I don't need Starbucks, I will be okay, like I do not need a coffee, I will be okay, and like moving on, and within like 10 minutes I'm fine, and I move on with my day or whatever it is. So like, but
that's such a good even just example of why Lent matters, and because we are so used to instant gratification, even in the small things of coffee or treats or whatever.
I love my coffee.
It's
got it right here.
Easy. Yeah, it's so easy to lean into those things. And Lent, if you do something that allows you to like check your emotional desires like that. So for me, I'm doing binge watching television shows.
It's really good.
No more binging Netflix or HBO or whatever, we still will watch like a movie. I'll still like do that, but it's because that feels more intentional. When you watch a movie, you have an ending, a start and ending. But it's also provided space to just hang out, and Shelly and I have just been using that space to like just be together, hang out. We made like we played like a youth group game by ourselves, which is super so ridiculous.
So youth pastor of you.
Yeah, we did. We were like, let's try this game out sometime, and we were like, let's do it now. Fun. So we did that, and then also just been reading, and but it's been good. Yeah. So that's been beneficial for sure. We went and saw. We went to the movies last week on one of the nights too, which is cool. So yeah.
Well, you watch. Sorry, I'm like really fascinated now with your rules. Can you watch like one episode? Because that's not binging. Okay, no.
We can do that on Sunday.
Okay.
Yeah, we'll give ourselves permission to watch a show on Sunday, but because the show, that's the thing is like I found.
You can't just watch one.
No.
Yeah.
I can't do it. Yeah, and they're designed to hook you in.
Right.
Every show, every good show now gives that every time you are wanting more at the end every single time. And
with a movie, you get closure at the end, at least a little bit. I
found myself craving this like redemptive part of the story. I want to see it. I need to see it. And then you just keep. All of a sudden, you just wasted. Wasted 4 hours of your day binging these shows. So movies are. It's like a start and a close, and you're done, and that was really good. So that's what I'm doing.
That's
it's been really good.
Yeah.
Yeah. So.
I like it.
So that's going on, which is cool.
Yep.
Always good practices to give things over to the Lord to see where we're kind of living of our own flesh, our own selves.
Good reality check.
Yeah, it is. What have we become dependent upon that?
For sure.
Maybe he's gone a little bit out, but that's good. We had winter camp.
Yes.
Oh my gosh.
Amazing.
Let's talk about winter camp for a second.
I just felt so honored to be there. I was like, guys, how did I get in? How am I here right now? But it was so great. For
those who are listening, winter camp was crazy for high school for us because we loaded our bus, 46 total people, leaders and students. We're driving up to Hume Lake. We had called them before because there's weather predictions happening, and it was pretty severe. I mean, it never happens like that in the Bay Area. And so we called ahead and said, is there any chance this is going to get canceled? And they were very certain, nope, we're fine coming up. So we were stoked and communicated to our parents and students and all the stuff. We're good to go. And we load the bus, and an hour and a half into our drive, my wife gets a phone call from Hume that they've canceled camp. My wife got a phone call from Hume, and it went from a full-on, this is so crappy. Like we're about to have to turn this bus around and camp is canceled, to wait a second, what could we do instead? And God just provided everything. We ended up going to Sacramento. We called one of our youth pastor friends. Shout out to Matt Bleckley.
This is the second shout out he's gotten. He got
out of
one
4
earlier.
Episodes. If he ever listens to this,
I didn't tell him about it. Dang.
But he hosted us, and then friend Justin came and was our guest speaker Friday night. Friend Marie came and led worship.
Oh, amazing. So
and got like our bus driver was like, yeah, you have me the whole trip.
So kind.
All 3, like you guys have me booked for 3 days. So So we decided to just do our own camp, and we invented our own winter camp on the spot.
For real.
And God was so good to us.
It was so great. I don't know how.
Ice skating, bowling, go-karting for fun activities, the evening sessions.
Go-karting.
Let's talk about Saturday night. What do we do Saturday night?
I just got excited about the go-karting. I'm like, come on. Shout out to Sage crashing into Ben every 5 seconds and getting us kicked off the track, basically. Love it. Saturday night. Well, all of our sessions were great. Our worship and our worship sessions being together. Saturday night was super cool because Ben had all of the small groups. We decided we were gonna have everybody get to just pray over each other within small groups. Everybody was prayed for by multiple people in the small group, and we just got to spend time intentionally lifting each other up, encouraging each other, hearing what everybody's struggling with and going through, and being able to, help when we can, encourage where we can, and just be there for each other. And it was so cool for me to get to be a part of that, and then just also just seeing how God was moving and building relationships with everybody in the small groups and with each other, and then like group-wise too, just coming back together after small groups with worship and getting to be together and just worshiping together and getting to see everybody just so close, and it was amazing.
It was so awesome.
I loved it.
Yeah, the Saturday night was so cool for me. I got to pray with a group of junior guys who I've known for a little bit, and one of them brought a new friend, but they were, oh my gosh, like just so intentional and thoughtful with their prayers. They prayed over me, getting to share
so cool.
just what we're just carrying right now, struggling with our fears, and hear these guys just say, Jesus, I just pray that this person knows that they're not alone, and that you're with them, and then even asking for like forgiveness for certain things that they've done to each other. I mean, it just was like just so tender and awesome and cool. So God was, it was better than we could have ever expected.
Yes, truly.
God was so faithful to us, so good. Our other intern, Jeremy, I thought he like phrased it really well, like the joy of the Lord just covered our group, and kids they just were pumped to get out of Marin, and the fact that Hume got canceled was a bummer, but the fact that we got to pivot and still do something else, they were pumped on that.
I never even heard anyone be like, oh, this just sucks, or this is dumb, or like, nobody, everyone get kicked into like, sweet, like what else? Yeah. What else are we doing? And every student I feel like came back being like, this was better than Hume.
Yeah, like, they were pumped on it.
And being aware of like, dude, God did something so cool this weekend. Like he was here, like I got to sit and pray with one student too, and she's just saying how like she just felt like God was there in the room with us, and I was like, yes he is, like, and it was just so great to see that. And
the whole weekend was just a testimony that God's ways are better than our ways. His
and what we can think or plan or imagine.
Shelly and I were talking how if we had planned out that trip, it would have taken us months and it would not have gone that well.
Yeah.
But the fact that it had to come together in the way it did, in like the way that it just was so incredible. Seriously. It was so good. So that good. We're all kind of off that high from what God did at our pivoted winter camp 2023.
For real. One for the books.
For the books.
For the books.
For sure.
I think that's just your new plan now. We just don't plan winter camp. We get on the bus
and see what happens.
And see what happens.
We'll just stressfully call everybody to see who wants to take us in.
It's like, this is the way we plan things now. Hey, saves you some time in the months ahead.
Seriously. Yes. Procrastination is the fastest plan.
Like, do you really believe in God, or are you just getting on the bus? You gotta fully trust. I'm just kidding.
No, but Jesus was so good to us.
So great.
Stoked, and I'm stoked you got to come on that too.
Yeah, I felt it was so great. I was going to be like my last Hume, and I got something way better.
Yeah.
Something else I can take with me, and just getting to be with. Shout out to the sophomore, junior girls that welcomed me into their small group and let me be their leader for a while. And I hope I was good to them, but I tried. But it was so great getting to spend time with them.
That'll for sure be a camp that we remember forever. I mean, it was
truly.
so good.
So good.
Okay, let's go to a question today.
Let's dive in.
What do we got?
All right, so we are looking at this question that we've got that says, how do people know what their spiritual gift is and how to use different spiritual gifts in the context of high school and being a teenager?
Spiritual gifts.
So spiritual gifts is what we are
Yes, let's talk about spiritual gifts and what it means to use them and be part of them in, or use them in high school in that context.
Right.
So there's a handful of passages that talk about spiritual gifts.
We did our homework this time.
We did. Yep. And we're going to kind of summarize a few of those passages. So we're going to kind of work actually backwards. Can you talk about the 1 Corinthians ones, just a nutshell? We can kind of just summarize what they say. The first one. Do you want to talk about
1 Corinthians 12. I think these are within the verses 8 through 11. But they just share some of the spiritual gifts that I'm going to read some of them. Wisdom, knowledge, faith, healing, miraculous powers, prophecy, distinguishing between spirits, speaking in tongues, and interpreting tongues, which is a lot of like biblically sounding words and a lot of confusion. So
totally. Yep. In that same passage too, in 1 Corinthians 12 later on, Paul summarizes them again, and he says, apostles, he uses the words apostles, prophets, teachers, miracles, gifts of healing, guidance, and tongues again. And so we wanted to just address some of these pieces: wisdom, knowledge, faith, healing, miraculous powers. It's like the first one's like, okay, on board, and then it's like we just transport it into some fantasy world that none of us sees. Or our tradition just doesn't really lean into some of those things, right? So like speaking in tongues is definitely like a more charismatic tradition embraced today. In our context, our church is not opposed to it, but doesn't talk about that or preach that actively. And so it's just not a common experience. So these can kind of seem like really mystical kind of things. But then there's a Romans passage. This is how we're working backwards. In the Romans passage, these are the gifts that Paul writes. He says, prophesying, serving, teaching, encouraging, giving, leading, and showing mercy, which all of those actually feel a little more concrete.
Tangible,
But let's go ahead and break down some of these ones and talk about how these can be applied today. So let's talk about wisdom for a second. What is the gift of wisdom? What do you think?
Gift of wisdom. Someone who has something to share, has something that they've experienced, has learned something along the way, and can now share that to others and give that wisdom to others, I think.
Yeah.
Super cool.
I think wisdom is, it's knowing what is right. Like there's an integrity piece of wisdom, and knowing how to live in a way that doesn't cater to one side or the other, but the wise choice is not necessarily like the happiest choice or the most even exciting choice, but it's the right choice to make. So someone who has wisdom, they know what to do, they know what's right, and because of usually life experience, that proves that along the way. Okay, so we got that. We have knowledge.
I feel like kind of goes pairs well.
Similarly.
Yeah.
Knowledge, I think, is just having a wellspring of data, information, facts. And like when it comes to spiritual knowledge, like there's certainly like knowledge of Scripture, like you know what the text, and you know the context of the text. You know, you're not just like quoting random Scripture verses, but there's that piece for sure. And being someone who also just has more data points, even across the board with other belief systems and different topics in school, like that's certainly, if you're like book smart, you got knowledge.
Yeah,
That's
you can
kind
take
of the
it
way
all
to
in.
think about that. But there's also like common sense knowledge too, and sometimes those don't overlap. Right? I had a lot of
Book
friends
smart,
who were
street smart.
yeah,
type idea.
yeah. A lot of friends who I was much more book smart than street smart when I was growing up, but I had friends who were the opposite. So different kinds of knowledge. But knowing is like you in your being, you don't have to like look it up. You just like, which I think that gift is like totally diminished these days because we can look up whatever we want on our phone.
True.
So it's harder to have that one. Okay, gift of faith. Talk about that, Katie.
I like this one. I think gift of faith is having hope and having that faith and being able to, I think, so I was talking to Ben a little bit about this, but for me, I feel like this is one of my spiritual gifts, and that I feel like, okay, I'm going to get off on a little small tangent, but the idea that like, I don't know, sometimes people are like, it comes up in conversation where it's like, oh, what did like people, how do people describe you, or like what is one of those things? And I often like get told like, oh, you're just so joyful and like happy to be here, like bubbly, whatever. And I always feel like I would attest that to like joyfulness comes from that idea of like having hope. Like I'm like, we are all like, I know what the future is going to be like because I have hope in that, and I think it's because I have faith, and I have faith in Jesus, and I have like, it all kind of stems, and I feel like faith is one of those things where it like, everything is connected to that, and if you are rooted in faith, if you've got that gift in you, which, so it's like that idea that it's something, you have faith, but it's also like almost a gift that is something that like for me, it's such a strong point in my life where it's like I have faith, which gives me hope, which brings joy, and I like want to spread that joy with everybody else. And so for me, that's how I think that applies.
Awesome.
But
yeah, I love that, the gift of faith. I mean, all these are gifts, right? None of these are things that we have to we don't have to contrive them on our own. Like God gives them to us. And I think faith is one of the few gifts where we often feel like we have to contrive that of ourselves, and that's just not the case. Faith is a gift, and so God gives us that. And Jesus is like, well, how much faith is enough faith? And people talk about having lack of faith or not enough faith, or wrestling with their faith, and those are all like great conversational pieces. And if we actually thought about faith as it's a gift given to us from God, even just simply believing in God at all comes from Him. Like it doesn't come from within, and we have just said, that's what I like. That's it. Jesus is like, I want you to have a mustard seed's worth of faith. That's it. The smallest, and I'm giving it to you.
Right.
So, one, it's not yours to be had in the first. Like, it is coming from me, and it's not coming from within yourself. So, and the fact that you have that.
Oh, sorry. I don't want to cut you off. I was just saying, I feel like I naturally have that I'm a believer type person. I'm going to believe in something. My personality is just I need something. So future wise, I can look ahead, and I'm believing in something that and I choose to believe in Jesus, and I choose to have that faith, and so that I think is where it's centered. But that's the idea. I didn't just create that. Naturally, I have that gift from the Lord of that faith, that belief thing, and it's what you're putting your faith in that you choose. But but I think that one's for me, and again, it all connects into your personality in that way. But
which actually reframes how we think about doubting and asking big questions about God, because all those questions then are actually a process of shaping your faith.
Right.
So if you actually thought about, if we actually could think about our doubts and our struggles as actually part of the process now, all of that's a gift.
Right.
And that's, oh my gosh, that's such a freeing thought to think, oh man, all the questions I have about God, He's not ashamed of that. He's not afraid of that. We can bring to Him whatever, because my faith is it's been given to me. And so if I'm asking questions about it, that means that God is drawing me into a deeper place to refine it, to understand, to grow. That's really cool.
Yeah, that's what I was saying, because I don't want to seem like I'm always rock solid. I got this perfect faith all the time, but because that's not the case, and I 100% have all the doubts and all the things that everyone struggles with in that way. But I think the idea being that's focused on I still have that I'm gonna believe in something mindset, but it's the doubts and everything is what I'm believing in, and am I fully believing in God like I say that I am, or and when moments and doubts and things like that come up, but having that being part of the process, and knowing that I'm always gonna have that, I still have that gift of faith. It's just where am I placing that? And in certain seasons, I'm really heavily placing it in God, and I get to see the fruit of that. But sometimes it's you're in a struggling season, and you're feeling further away, and I'm kind of leaning out of that, and I'm trusting worldly things as opposed to putting my, and so I think that's where it comes in. But the gift of faith is still there, if that makes sense. Yeah.
And then it's a gift because then as you live your life and you're with your friends and you're with your, you are a steady source of that hope. If you're leaning into that.
Yeah.
It's God has given me this crazy trust in Him. I don't know, I just know that He's with me, He loves me, He's for me. And if you're living that out all the time, that's a gift to other people too, which is really cool. That's how you live that out, which is rad. I totally agree. Affirm that in you, Katie. You definitely have that. There's no doubt. That's rad. Let's go into these last ones. Healing, miraculous. I'm just kind of these ones seem kind of crazy. Healing, miraculous powers, prophesying, distinguishing between spirits, speaking in tongues, interpreting tongues. Okay, let's talk about prophecy for a second, because the rest of these a different category, but I want to talk about those in a second. But prophecy, the gift of prophecy.
It's a weird word. It's there's too many different versions of it.
Well, people talk about modern day prophets now. I see that in a lot. People are very spiritual today. There's no doubt about that. And people talk about, oh my gosh, such a prophet. And whenever I've heard that, people say someone deemed as that, that's they have this sense into the spiritual world. And that is just uncanny and mysterious. And I don't know if you've seen people talk about it like that. But prophecy is actually, especially Old Testament prophecy, is to be a prophet sucked. Like it was it was terrible because God had given prophets a word of like correction or rebuke for the nation of Israel, and then they were oftentimes killed. So to be a prophet was a terrible thing because that meant God had spoken to you, and then you bring this word to the people, and you're probably going to die because they're not going to want to hear it. So it's actually a word of turning people back towards God. And that's how most prophets were. And so the way we think about this now, and I think how Paul uses it in prophecy, prophesying is like this, it's like God has given someone a word and then they speak it out loud. And what can get dangerous is, I don't know, it's easy to make, if anyone is claiming to be a prophet today, like I am a prophet, this is one of those gifts that like requires so much humility and almost the whole process of the church affirming somebody, oh yeah, this person's, they have this gift. Like they speak truth to power. They're not afraid to say the hard thing. And whenever they speak and open their mouth, God does something with our group and brings us back to a deeper state. I think that has to be affirmed externally because if someone says, I'm a modern prophet, that's how you get like spiritual abuse and like, just really dangerous stuff. So, but yeah, if you're a truth teller, that's the prophet. Okay, the rest of these.
Sick.
Healing, miraculous powers, distinguishing between spirits, speaking in tongues, interpreting tongues. Okay, healing, miraculous powers. Katie, have you ever experienced any of these? How would you interpret these? Healing, miraculous powers. How's that come across for you?
So personally, I've heard many stories. I know you have stories of getting to experience these moments of that, and I personally haven't like firsthand, but I think maybe it's again ties to the fact that I believe in things really strongly, but I hear these stories and I'm just like, oh my gosh, and like I have no doubt in my mind. I'm like, wow, like Jesus, and even I'm like I wasn't there, I didn't see anything, but like I'm so quick to believe people, so maybe that ties back into the faith gift, but no, I definitely have. I've heard many stories, and I would love to. I mean, one day get to experience that, but I don't know. I feel like I should toss it to you.
No, it's good. I mean, I think the gift of healing. What does it mean to be someone who's a person of healing? I think that can come in a lot of different ways. I think you can be a person who's emotionally safe, and so you can be a healing presence. Yeah. You can be a healing presence with how you listen well. One of our leaders, Jamie, I want to say, a month and a half ago, 2 months ago maybe, she's a therapist, she talked about how the art of listening as a spiritual gift is an act of healing. And I think that's beautiful and super well spoken. I think God uses, like if you have an inclination to become a doctor and you want to be that's healing. Like that is that, and there's no separation. Like God uses that fully. God definitely uses medicine and the wonder of it. If we actually think about what medicine actually is, even just a simple thing as like Advil. You're like, I have a headache and I take this pill and then the headache goes away. That's pretty insane. Like the basic things. But then there's the bigger, crazier, miraculous sorts of things. And gosh, yes, I do have a few stories myself. I've gotten to be a part of moments where prayed over people and watched them be healed. And one of my story that I go to with this, my best friend Barry and his wife Letitia, this was a number of years ago, but I was with them and a few other students of mine from Kansas City, and Letitia had chronic back pain, and me and some of these guys, we got to pray over her, and she was healed. Like it was wild to watch. There's a whole story within that, but I don't know how God allows us to be a part of those moments sometimes, but I think there's a reality of going, gosh, I want to pray bold prayers and believe that the Holy Spirit can use me without feeling like if he doesn't, then I'm a failure or whatever. That's why these ones get so dicey, because it feels like God doesn't do it all the time, or if he does, then he only does it through certain people. And
why sometimes and not others.
And there's just like the reality is like it's all a mystery, but gosh, I do believe God does that, and there are certain times where I feel emboldened to pray for people, but I think we're all called to pray. We're called to pray as a church for those who are suffering and hurting, and God can heal. I have to believe that, even if we don't see it all the time. Cool. Speaking in tongues, interpreting tongues, those are ones, I don't know, because they're outside of our context, but if I can like nutshell those gifts, how I've seen them. Yeah. So when I've seen it done in healthy ways, tongues is a form of worship. And Paul talks about like basically uttering these, the Spirit utters these noises, intercedes on our behalf through wordless groans is the idea. So that's like the scripture behind that, and people who talk about speaking in tongues, they oftentimes talk about it like it's an expression of worship, but has a particular articulation. I don't have the gift of speaking in tongues, so I don't know what this is like, but I know it's sought after by certain communities, and which is great. And then there's the interpreter. This is where Shelley, this is her soapbox. She's like, where's the interpreter?
Her dream.
But I want to be open-hearted and open-handed to seeing more of that in our church.
Totally.
Okay, let's move on to, those are those pieces.
Right.
Let's give a little shaping, because some of those can feel like, okay, great, those are all gifts in the church. But these ones are really cool. So then we have prophesying, serving, teaching, encouraging, giving, leading, showing mercy. And my goodness, these are gifts that every single person can exercise at any point in time. When you think about those, Katie, serving, leading, encouraging, giving, leading, and showing mercy, how does one determine if they have that gift or not?
I honestly feel like all of these things, I think you said it really well, of like, these are all things that like we can be part of, and I mean, sometimes one of them is going to stand out more than the other for each person, and I think that's where like the idea of that being your spiritual gift comes in. But I feel like everyone can like strive to like be able to be a part of all of these things too, and so like being able to like, these are not like you have one and then you're like I have the gift of serving and I therefore cannot encourage anyone ever, like so I think that idea is super important. But also I think when it comes to like determining, at least I just touching on, since we're speaking for high schoolers and teenagers, and that idea that like I honestly feel like it's just being a part of all those things and like getting to experience all that, and then kind of finding like what, I don't know, it feels like to me it's like a feeling where you're just like, this is like feels like what I'm really good at, what I'm meant to be doing, what I'm supposed to, and I can't necessarily explain exactly what that's like, but I also think it doesn't, and it can be over time. It's not like you'll have this big moment where it's like, now I know I'm supposed to do this, but like, and it may be that, but it may also just be like over time being like, I think this is what I really love. So like for me, I mean, all of these, like I feel like I try my best to attempt at, incorporating in my life, but what's standing out, at least for now, is, so when I graduated high school, I didn't really have like something where I was like, I want to be this when I grow up, idea. And so but since, being one of the interns here and experiencing that, I've like kind of grew into realizing like I love like the idea of like teaching and like getting with middle schoolers, like getting to spend time with them and like like teaching what I know, like where I'm like, I don't know how much I know, but I'm going to give you what I do know and be able to help you with that, and like giving advice and like being that person in that way. And through a couple other things and experiences in the last couple of years, like figuring out, I also have a really strong love for younger kids, and so it all kind of weaved into this way of like, I want to be an elementary school teacher, and that's where I figured that out, and through that, like I feel like I have that gift of being able to teach, whether it be kids or whatever. And so like for that one's just coming up because I have that story of like, and now I'm like set, and I really like do strongly feel like that is what I'm supposed to be doing. And I never would have like I was not like, I want to be a teacher. I was like the kid that was like, I don't want to associate with a school after high school, like the kind of person, but now I'm like, no, that's what I want to do. So, but I think, but also I think what else would come up for me would be, so that's the one that stands out, but also like, I think encouraging, like I try to be that as much as possible, and encouraging everyone when I think about it, even when it comes to like like strangers and little things. Like I've started to be like, if I like think in my head like a compliment for a stranger, it's like, oh, I like they're this, or like they're whatever, I'm like, have forced myself to now be in a place where I always tell, say it. I always tell them no matter what the situation is, kind of just because it's you never know how much that's going to impact someone's day too, or whatever it is. But I think that's my instinct.
That's good.
At least.
I love what you said about the instinctual piece, because at the end of the day, especially in this Romans 1, I think every person who calls themselves a follower of Jesus is called to doing, serving, leading, encouraging, giving, showing mercy. At certain points in time, you're going to utilize those things if you're a part of the church. But the idea of what gets me really excited and gives me joy, and oh man, when I do this thing, I come alive. And I think for me, there's one student who comes to mind a few years ago. His name's Jonathan. He's graduated now, but Jonathan, a very soft-spoken guy. He if you know him, he doesn't talk a whole lot. He doesn't lean into that. So the idea of teaching for him, or even blatant encouraging, those things require verbal.
Right.
He's an encouraging person, but he's not going to think to go out of his way. But when it came to serving, anytime we did a service project at all, he was I'm there.
Yeah.
I'm in. And he was quick at the end of the project to be okay, now let me know when the next one is. He wanted to show up and he wanted to be there. And so he undeniably has the gift of serving.
Yeah.
And so I think about that as that's such a sweet gift. I think for me, I resonate with teaching and wisdom, as obviously being a youth pastor to get that platform, but I love it. I love taking ideas and connecting them together and seeking to give students or anyone who listens to me something tangible that they can go, man, I think if I utilize that in some way, my life would look a little more like Jesus. That brings me so much life to do that. I find a lot of joy in doing that, studying. I listen to a lot of podcasts, and I love to dig into talk. I love that kind of stuff. So that for me is something that brings up a lot of joy. But then I also think about other people who they've been just generously blessed with lots of resources, and we live in a church that gives. We have a wealthy church, but we have a generous church, and people give, and that is a gift. And I think you think about this, the totality of this. If every church thought this way, that gosh, as human beings, we all have this is the best of us that God has given. How can we lean into each other with that? So. Yeah, I think that these are all things that you have to just kind of go, what do I resonate with? What gets me excited? And to give opportunity for yourself to try things out too.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, and that's what words. Yeah. Kind of what I wanted to touch on. The idea and this question being asked kind of tied into, so how do people know what their spiritual gift is? And then also how to use different spiritual gifts in the context of high school and being a teenager. And that's kind of what I wanted to touch on the idea of try things out. This is, I think, I think to not put too much pressure on yourself to feel like you need to know now. I mean, people, I feel tell this all the time for teenagers and in high school in general of this is your teens, this is your time to figure out what you want to be about, what you want to, and that's the time of, and that's going to involve with this trying all these things, putting yourself out there, signing up to serve for things, trying maybe whatever for teaching, opportunities that come up every now and then for some sort of student leadership. Especially we're talking to high schoolers, helping out with middle school maybe, or talking, I don't know, things like that come up all the time. Working on encouraging people in however that looks for you. Maybe, if you're verbal talking, but maybe if you're not, writing letters. I don't know, something, so trying things and feeling out what really I don't know. Yeah, it brings you joy, stands out to you. You have, it's one of those things where it's a feeling that you can't even put into words, at least for me, where I'm you just no, I don't know. At some point you start to just kind of know. And again, it might not be okay, now this big moment, now I know, but over time you're starting to reflect on the time and being wow, I've really enjoyed this, or whatever it is. And so
I think for some tangible, concrete ways to think about these things too is if you're a person who, if you're in high school, and so it is so easy to talk trash about people. It's so easy to gossip, but perhaps there's something inside of you that goes, gosh, I actually need to stop doing that, or like, I need to actually tell this person to stop doing that. Like, that's a gift of prophecy.
Yeah.
Like, you're trying to write a direction. Like, that's what that...
Redirect the conversation.
Yeah, like that's a shifting of, like, you're trying to do the right thing. That's a gift of prophecy. If your desire to serve, like you want to be a part of, like, running a clothing donation thing, or you want to be a mentor to younger students, or you find a lot of joy in helping clean up garbage, and like, gift of serving. Like, if you find yourself like, maybe the mentoring one would be better for teaching, but you find yourself
like
in a place, you find yourself like, gosh, I understand like these subjects. I found myself in high school every now and then being a resource for my peers. Like, they'd be like, dude, you get this, I don't, can you help me? Like, offering that is teaching, encouraging, like, gosh, anyone who just gives a voice of, dude, I just really love how you do this. I appreciate your kindness. I appreciate the way that you love other people. I appreciate how you're thoughtful. Like, any word of that is, like, that's such a,
I was gonna say, and to add on that, because I think also right now, like, I feel like I've just observed and noticed, like, too, I feel like I don't know if it's like just a 2023 thing or a Marin thing, or I don't know what about it, but I feel like I've noticed a lot of, like, it's just like, it's not necessarily quote unquote normal to do that and like pull someone aside and encourage them in that way, being like, I love this about you or whatever. Like, it's not it's not a habit. It's not going to come up naturally a lot of times. And the only time really I think it would come up is if we're at youth group, we plan to make that happen. You know what I mean? So like, but on your own, getting that opportunity to be like, I think, I'm like, I am encouraging you to encourage people in the way that, like, it seems, I think, kind of weird for a second, and then as soon as you do it, though, it's like, it's just you and that person, and you're getting to, like, encourage them in whatever it looked like, and just being like, whether that's, calling them after something, and letting them know if something happened where you're like, dude, this just, like, made my day, or you encouraged me this way, or I'm going to encourage you, I love this about you, or whatever that looks like, because there isn't, I think there's not really never going to be a natural time that comes up where you're like, oh, I'll just wait till it comes up naturally. You have to be the one to be like, hey, like, I want to tell you this, and so,
Totally.
I think that's a really cool
thing. If you're a person who speaks encouragement, you will defaultly look more like Jesus, just because it's just how it is. Yeah.
Anyways, continuing.
No, it's good. Yeah, I mean, giving, being generous with your time, with your money, with your resources, like that. That's a great one. If you find yourself wanting to take charge and be a leader, there's a way to do that. That's like Christ-like serving mentality.
Yeah, leading. I mean, you can lead too. Like in school, there's leadership. I mean, that's leading your school, kind of.
I think the difference with spiritual leadership versus that is, are you using your platform to boost yourself or to help lead other people into a place of deeper connection and unity and love?
But I even think you can be that spiritual leadership, even like on like a leadership team at school, and just like, how do you want the school to be represented, and having your voice on that team as like someone who has, like, is gonna, and I mean, not to like get in there and be like, we all need Jesus here at school, but like just being that presence in on that team, I think is really like
sports
cool
captains for teams and stuff. Like, if you are someone who people look up to, how do you leverage your voice well? So that's an easy thing.
I don't know.
And then showing mercy. My goodness, this is just one if we could all. If there's someone who just like, they deserve something else. This person wronged me, but I'm not going to do it back to them. That's just a huge gift.
Hard one, but a gift for sure.
I think what's cool with all these, so Paul writes this, especially at the end of the Corinthians passage, right? He lists off all these things, and I think this is maybe a good spot to wrap this up, is he writes this, I'm just going to quote this from the scripture. He says, if I speak in the tongues of men or of angels but do not have love, I'm only a resounding gong or a clanging cymbal. If I have the gift of prophecy and can fathom all mysteries and all knowledge, and if I have a faith that can move mountains but do not have love, I am nothing. If I give all I possess to the poor and give over my body to hardship that I may boast, but do not have love, I have nothing. And it's just like this focus. My goodness, we talk about it all the time, but Christ-like love serves. Christ-like love shows mercy. Christ-like love encourages. Christ-like love forgives. And when you love people like Jesus calls us to love them, and how Jesus already does love them, you're going to lean into your spiritual gifts just defaultly because you're choosing to love like Jesus calls us to.
Yeah.
So
it's cool.
So be one who loves well, like Jesus does, and then the gifting will come along. It'll come along. It'll be a gift.
Yeah. Ha. Wow, that's good.
There it is.
And but I think we wanted to add too, if you want to, if you're really like, I really want to like seek out and figure this out, see what it is, we have a potential cool resource for you that we want to add. When I was in high school, Ben had us take this, I don't know, it was just spiritual gifts. It's kind of like personality tests where you like fill things out and then you get, and it kind of like, I think these were basically all the things that we've been talking about were some of the like potential, not answers, but I don't know what you would call that, like things that you would get, and it would kind of show you based off of how you answered the questions, maybe which way you're leaning. And so obviously that's just a written test, and like there's not, the test isn't going to tell you what you are, but if it's like, hey, I'm kind of like just trying to figure out, and then maybe it's like you take it and you see what you get, and maybe that's something you're going to try out next and see if that really is what you like, or trying out all these things is also a great idea. But it's also just a fun resource, and I like personality tests. I think they're cool to like see. And you get to geek out over your answers and see what happens. But I think that
we'll link that in the show notes. Is that how you do it?
Right? So if you're listening on Spotify, the description will have it, and then also on YouTube, okay, so both. The description will have. I can put a link in there. So yeah.
Cool. So we'll do that for sure.
Sweet. So
good stuff.
Yeah.
Love well. That's how you find your spiritual gift. Cool.
All right. It is that time.
POV. Thoughts from my quiet time. My turn this week.
It is Ben's turn this week.
This is great. I've been reading actually through 2 Corinthians, and and this is just just where I'm at. This is gonna be really short, but just reading through, Paul talks about generosity, and this is what he writes. God is able to bless you abundantly, so that in all things at all times, having all that you need, you will abound in every good work. And then just after that, he writes, this is 2 Corinthians chapter 9. That was verse 8. And then he goes on a little bit. Then he writes, verse 11, you'll be enriched in every way so that you can be generous on every occasion. And just thinking about God's generosity towards us, and I think for me where I'm at now, I've been just wrestling with kind of a scarcity mindset of, gosh, I don't have enough. We just had our 20-week ultrasound, which was super exciting, and baby's coming along well, and he's cooking just fine.
Cooking, baby.
But I'm just like, gosh, do we have what it takes to like make it in Marin? And I've just been wrestling with kind of that mindset, and I really have nothing to worry about. Like objectively, have nothing to worry about. We don't have anything to worry about. But it's easy to think that, oh man, and it's just been, even just with the times, high inflation, all that stuff, like rising costs of living. It's easy to kind of tap into this fear that we don't have enough. And but this passage was so good for me to read because it's just, my goodness, God blesses you, and He blesses you abundantly, so that in all things at all times, having all that you need, you can abound in every good work. All things, all times. Like there's never a moment. There's never a moment where we don't have what we need. That God is always providing us what we need. Not necessarily what we want, but what we need.
Which connects to my Lent for me. Same idea. Like I do not need the little things that I think I do. And
what we need, He gives it to us so that we can, and not just enough, like more than enough. Like we can be generous. We can be generous. We can live generously. We can live abundantly at any point in time because God does give us what we need. That is just how it works. So I've been encouraged to think deeper about God's generosity at all times. To not live in a place of fear and scarcity, but out of generosity and love. So there's my quiet time.
That's very good. I like that. Wow. Like we got full circle back to the Lent and everything.
Super good.
I love that.
Sweet.
Well, so great. Everyone, thank you for listening. We just love it. This is my podcast voice. Hello, everyone. But so good. What a good episode. I like this topic too. I feel like We could just go on and on, but
it's good.
But yeah, definitely, again, bringing it back, high school, teenager, all that stuff. It's the time to figure it out. Don't put too much pressure on it, but we gave you some resources if you want to start thinking about it, and I think that's cool. So, awesome.
For sure.
Well, we love you all so much. Thank you for listening. This is, again, this is Our House podcast. Here we are. And once again, I'm Katie Hill.
I'm Ben Zulsdorf.
We love you all.
And always remember,
hashtag this is our house.
See you next time.
See you next time.